My name is Mario Bretfeld, and I'm an assistant professor of biology in the College of Science and Mathematics. From a very early age, I've been enthralled with nature. When my friends dressed up as princesses and pirates for carnival, I would dress up as a professor of biology. There is so much to learn about nature, and I'm fortunate that my career enables me to explore vastly different ecosystems around the globe. I started close to home, in the coastal salt marshes of Germany and the Netherlands, where the vegetation is flooded twice daily by saltwater. My first contribution to a published research project was in the dry alva grasslands of Sweden. A landscape ecologist by training, my early research revolved largely around restoration and management. After moving to the US, I became increasingly interested in forests, ranging from subalpine boreal forests of the Rocky Mountains to seasonally dry tropical forests in central Panama. It is thanks to working in these vastly different ecosystems and the positive influence of my postdoctoral advisor, Dr. Brent Evers at the University of Wyoming, that made me look for a common denominator. You see, whether your day in the field includes skiing through 2 meters of snow in a forest dominated by only one, maybe two tree species, or whether your work gets interrupted by howler monkeys in a tropical forest that is host to over 600 tree species, all these ecosystems and the plants in them have one thing in common. At the most fundamental level, their functioning, their physiology is governed by physics. It starts with the physical properties of the environment: solar radiation, wind, temperature, humidity, soil moisture, and so on. Integrating this information with plant physiology, that is how plants function and respond to their environment, is what defines a plant ecophysiologist. Let's picture a highly simplified tree as an assembly of small tubes through which water moves from the soil into the air. How much water depends on the properties of the tubes and the pressure gradient between its ends, and is summarized in a physical law first described by French engineer Henri Darcy. Plant ecophysiologists are often interested in the properties of the tubes inside a tree. We can estimate how much water is flowing through the stem by applying a short pulse of heat and measuring how the heat dissipates in the stem. We can also measure the pressure gradient from the soil moisture near the roots and leaf water status in the canopy. Using Darcy's law, we can then calculate the tree's hydraulic conductivity, in other words, the properties of the tubes. The results tell us a lot about how tightly the tree regulates water use, for example in response to stress. Rather than empirically connecting observations, anchoring research in so-called first principles, like Darcy's law, enables us to understand processes at their most fundamental level. As a result, we gain a mechanistic understanding, for example, of ecosystem recovery after a severe bark beetle outbreak and subsequent fire in southern Wyoming. The exciting part about this approach to research is that it can be applied at many different scales, from cells to ecosystems. One of the main reasons why I joined the KSU family in 2019 was the KSU Field Station, which is an incredible resource to enable applied research on common crop plants. To get started, we began installation of a 10-meter tower with scientific instruments measuring all important meteorological variables: radiation inputs, atmospheric and soil conditions, precipitation, and more. All these data will be freely available to anyone working at the field station. In the fall of 2020, we began setting up an interdisciplinary pilot study in collaboration with Dr. Satish Gurupatham from the Department of Mechanical Engineering at KSU and Michael Blackwell from the field station to look into thermobiological differences between organic tomatoes and those grown conventionally using fertilizer. While nutritional differences between organic and conventional tomatoes are fairly well studied, their thermal properties, that is, the ability of the fruit to store and dissipate heat, have not been compared. In fact, very little research has been done in this arena. We all refrigerate our food, and for a good reason, to slow down decomposition. The thermal properties of a fruit depend on its physical and biochemical properties, which in turn depend on the environmental conditions in which it was grown. Thus, by integrating physics and physiology, our study may help to improve the shelf life of tomatoes and other produce. This is especially important given that today's food production is highly centralized, with long transport times between producer and consumer. Most importantly, this project enabled over 30 students from 2 biology courses at KSU to engage in a semester-long, real-world research project. Highlighting the application of first principle approaches in class and research gives students a solid foundation to tackle any problem from the ground up. I hope that this is just the beginning of many such projects at the KSU Field Station.